So excited today because I get to welcome this man that everybody that I know loves, including me. So welcome to Artist Talk, Mr. Norm Lewis.
Hello, hello, and the crowd goes wild. I hear them. It's deafening. It's deafening.
Hey, brother.
Hey, sweetheart. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm blessed. I am really, really blessed. I mean, the thing about it is that, we're going through some challenging times, but there is well, we can get into that conversation, but I've had to like pull in and dive deep into my soul and my heart and just say thank you every day for living another day and healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Amen.
Yeah.
A lot of things you do. You do theater, you do concerts across the globe, even internationally. All of those things have been sort of paused.
Yeah.
So, aside from the fact we'll talk later that you're a big film and television star now, but yes, darling. But the pause in the theater and the concerts and all of that, have that left you with a void, or have you felt like, oh, I'm so glad for the break, or what's that been like for you?
No, it's definitely a void, and it's wow, it's so, I mean, you can't even express the feelings of it. There's such a sense of loss. There's such a sense of disappointment. There's such a sense of anger. There's such a sense of like, your artistry is not being fed and your soul's not being fed, and seeing your friends and seeing them do their thing, and it just kind of, you just try to stay, I don't want to say positive, but on a positive vibe, knowing that it will eventually come back, but you still have to kind of keep yourself in the training and the learning and all that stuff while we're waiting. And so, you just ask the Lord for help every day, just to kind of keep you going through.
Yeah. When you say your soul is not being fed, wow.
Well, I've always said, I've been blessed with the gift of being on stage and singing and acting, dancing, and but just entertaining, and that's a gift that I've been given. It's not mine. It really isn't. And I appreciate people loving to come and see what I do. But that does feed my soul. That's just a key to the door that opens up so I can communicate with folks. And that's what I love about live theater, because you get that visceral, immediate feeling. Television and film is fantastic. I love it. I don't want to, I don't want to begrudge that, but it's not that immediate feeling. You have to wait. So it's just, your soul's just not being fed immediately. And so, I think we're all hungry for that, artists.
What have you learned about yourself during this time of your soul being malnourished?
What I've learned, I think, is that I'm more impatient than I thought. I'm known for being patient. I'm known for being someone that people come to like either just be a sounding board or just somebody who can give advice or whatever. But I'm a little bit more impatient now. People have asked me to do certain things, and I had to be honest with them. Just recently, someone asked me to sing for a gala, and I said no, because I just didn't feel like there was no purpose for it. Of course, there was a purpose in order to let people see my artistry, but I didn't find the joy in it. So I know that wouldn't have been authentic, and I could not show that to them.
I totally get that. Did they want you to do it for free?
Yeah. I mean, and even if there were some paid things, I mean, we all have a price, and especially now because there's not a lot of jobs.
Yes.
But even in those things that are offering payment, it is only for the money. It really is a lot of times. I've been asked to do a couple of virtual concerts. Now there was some joy in that because it was my show, and it was I put it together, and the dialogue and everything. So it did feel good, even though it was not the norm and
Yeah.
the norm,
Yes.
the usual way of doing it. But at least it did. There was some satisfaction in it. But these other things where I go into certain Zoom rooms or whatever. Listen, I appreciate people wanting me to do them, and I there are times that I'm okay with it, but it is hard. It is hard because it is something that we're getting used to.
What's the last thing you did that you felt that way about?
Well, luckily this year I did a lot of concerts right before the pandemic happened, and I had just come back from Africa. I was on a cruise ship, and I did a couple of shows on that cruise, and it took us through South Africa. So that was satisfying. I took my sister, which was great because of the fact that we were in the homeland, even though we didn't see a lot of it, but we did. We touched Africa. You know what I mean? Like, so that was wonderful. Then I flew back, and I got a chance to perform a show at Kennedy Center and do my show, my concert there. So those kinds of things are satisfying because, like I said, I love live performance. You see immediate responses. But doing some television, doing some film stuff, I love that too. Gosh, I mean, there's so many things to be grateful for.
Yeah. So come on now, come on now, the Five Bloods.
Woo!
That was huge, and boy, the timing of
Yeah.
when it came out, all of that.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Whew, that was fantastic. So we shot that last year in Thailand. We were there for 3 months, and Thailand, and then some of it in Vietnam. And it was, for me, I was overwhelmed. I would have done it for $1.50. But to be on a Spike Lee joint, to be with Delroy Lindo and Isaiah Whitlock, Clark Peters, and now that new brother that's coming up, Jonathan Majors, that brother's going to take off. And so I was excited about all of that, and being in such a big budget film. I'd never done something that big. And to get to work with, God rest his soul, to get to work with Chadwick Boseman was, Black Panther. He was our king, that kind of thing. Just to be in his presence. And it was fantastic. So I would say that went by so quickly. And then finally, we didn't know when it was going to be released, but we were hoping around the time that was the Cannes Film Festival, we were actually supposed to open or at least premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, and then that got canceled. So Spike made and Netflix made the decision to come out at the time that we did, and it was like the perfect storm because of what had been happening in our society and just the theme of that. And so many people responded to it in such a way. I think it was even bigger than what would have been had it not had the pandemic or George Floyd incident not happened.
Yeah, and you are so low key. I mean, low key. I didn't know till I saw the movie that you were in the movie. I'm like, he didn't. Most people like posting, and they're like, not Norm. I remember seeing on television, Whoopi Goldberg she even said, like, my biggest surprise that I loved was seeing Norm Lewis. I was like, yes!
I was over the moon. I immediately sent her flowers for that, just to say thank you. I was like, oh my God, thank you for saying my name on national television. But, just to be in that ensemble and to tell that story about men that I am standing on the shoulders of, and to know that our history was, I don't even want to say erased, it just was never told. I had no idea until I started doing the movie that there was such a proportionate amount of Black men over in Vietnam fighting, as opposed to, I don't know if you heard it in the movie, but African Americans made up 11% of the United States. That's both men and women at that time. I think now it's around 13, 14%. Mm-hmm. But in Vietnam, for the being on the front line, there were 33% of the men that were there were African American. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up, that don't feel right. Something ain't right. So I had no idea. I had no idea because all these other Vietnam movies, basically you saw maybe one or two blacks somewhere, Apocalypse Now, and all these other major films that Scorsese did and stuff.
Yeah.
You saw maybe a couple of black folks, but not as many as we talked about.
Yeah, yeah. And they came back in bad shape.
Bad shape. If they came back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. You
Thank you.
deserve it. Nobody deserves it more. You are this person that every time you see you, you are filled with light. You're filled with joy. You always got a joke. Where does that come from? I mean, is that the real norm? Or yeah, I believe it. Everybody says that about
I've
you.
had people actually get mad at me because they say, you're not real. Like, this ain't real. This ain't real. And at first there was a time I was a people pleaser, back in the day, high school and things like that. There were times if someone didn't like me, it would bother me. And I even, in some cases, tried to buy friendships, like either candy or whatever the case may be. And as I got older, it was like, well, that's just it. And everybody ain't gonna like you. So you just got to stay on the course. Listen, I just remember my mom and dad putting into me, godly principles, things like that. And I'm not trying to spread the, brimstone and fire, all that stuff. I'm not trying to do all that, but that is a foundation that was instilled in me in the beginning. And it's about loving other people. And I've learned that there are other religions, other philosophies, ideologies out here, especially when I moved to New York. And the thing that really got me the most was because I used to argue about Christianity. I used to argue about it, like Buddhism is wrong and all this stuff. If you don't believe in Christ, then you're going to go to hell, And so we would have these debates. And then I got to thinking, I was like, wait a minute. So I've evolved, obviously. And what someone explained to me one time, they said, you know what? It's like a wheel. It's like a wagon wheel or a bicycle wheel. These spokes are going towards the center. And he said, all of them are trying to reach God. So you might come at it this way, and we all need each other. And I think the thing too, I'm getting all philosophical now, but the line that really gets me the most is whether you believe in God or not, or whatever, believe in rocks or science. The line in Les Miserables that touches me the most is to love another person is to see the face of God. And that's all we got to get along. We got to get along. We gonna live here. So let me respect you. Let me try to love you. Let me like you, and let's work together.
So what are we not doing in the country? I mean, you got it. You seem to have it. What are we not doing in the country that we're so divided?
We're not listening. We're hearing each other, but we're not listening. And I think that goes with any relationship. I mean, being in a marriage, being a girlfriend, boyfriend, or whoever you're with, sometimes the divide in that relationship is we're not listening to each other. There are certain people who are just lost. They think they're more superior than you are. So that's a whole nother issue. There was a little bit of decorum some years ago, being, whether you were Republican or Democrat, there would be some arguments, obviously, but I felt like there was a respect. And then just, I don't know, in the past couple of decades, it's just kind of declined. And then it's become cultish. Like right now, there's a cult out there.
You're really involved with the Black Theater United. You're one of the founding members. Is working with that organization, helping with what you're feeling about the country right now, and also how can we be a part of helping?
It's thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's it's a baby that actually LaChance and Audra McDonald kind of started because they were feeling the effects of the George Floyd and the lineage of people who had been killed in those weeks, and just that uprising. And so they were like, Broadway, what's going on? We producers, we don't hear from you. What's going on? You got a lot of Black people, Black and brown people on Broadway that are making you money. You need to say something. So this started from that idea. And so we all got together and started saying, what can we do now in order to make this better? So we decided to work on two different levels, the micro and also the macro. Micro basically meaning in theater. How can we make changes in theater and have an open dialogue about injustices and diversity and people who are feeling unheard? and just trying to open those kinds of doors, and maybe having mentorships and scholarships and open up a dialogue. Not only can we perform on stage, but we can do things in the office too. We can do things administratively, be casting directors. We can be, working in the general manager's office, things like that, to help make Broadway and theater more diverse.
So how can we help with what you guys are doing? How can the average person who works in the theater become a part of it?
Go to our website, and it's blacktheaterunited.com. Just go to that website, sign up, become either, if you are African American, say that you're African American. If you are not, say that you are an ally. It gives you that choice. And we make that distinction because we want people to understand that we are on a mission to definitely help Black people. We're specific about helping Black people, but we're also, that's why we put United in the title, because we're also going to help people who are people of color, and as I think the term is BIPOC.
Yes.
And so, and then if there are white allies who are willing to help and willing to listen and willing to guide us in this journey, we want people to do that as well. You can make donations or just become a member and find out what we're doing and just support that. But we got a lot of things on the horizon. We've done a lot of things, so we're excited.
Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and we support you for sure. Before we move on, I do want to ask you, though, when you were working on the film and you were working with Chadwick, is there something now that you say, oh, I noticed that then?
The only thing is, when I met him, because I had seen him obviously do so many things, but I specifically remember him being in such an incredible shape for Black Panther and being all cut up and stuff. And he was thin, but I just, not sickly thin. He just was thin. And I thought, well, either two things. That's a Hollywood thing that you have to do in order to look a particular way on screen, or he was, that's his normal weight, or maybe he was trying to get to something that he was a future project. That's all I thought. He didn't look unhealthy at all. He also ran up and down terrain like we did, and was in the heat and didn't complain about anything. So no clue at all. You could not tell at all. He was in great spirits. I can't remember if he actually had a drink or not, but we had a couple of get-togethers while he was still there. He only was there for like 2 weeks. And we had a couple of get-togethers, and he was there eating the food and dancing with folks and laughing it up. So my little short time with him was quality time. I wish I had had more. I wish, we could do more projects together. But he's left a tremendous legacy at such a young age, and will definitely be missed.
Yeah. So, Norm, being a trailblazer can sometimes be an honor. It's always great, you're the first Black to do this and the first Black person to do this. But how was it being the first Black man to play the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera? Was it?
Well, I want to make that on Broadway. Yeah.
On Broadway, yes.
Yeah. I always have to make that distinction because people, and I am honored to say that, but because a lot of people say, well, Robert Guillaume was the first Black. And it's like, I know, and I stand on his shoulders. But he did it in Los Angeles at the Pantages Theater. And that was the only way that I felt like I could possibly do it if I had some sort of, great resume, or if I was a star. But I had been longing to do that show for 20 years and kept saying it in interviews. People kept saying, what's your dream role? I said, the Phantom. And finally, that chance came about. And I remember going out on that stage for the audition. We actually auditioned on the stage in front of Hal Prince and some other creatives. And I just remember people living and people who are no longer with us, their souls were behind me saying, go for it. You got this. And this was right before I walked on stage. It was almost like Andre de Shields was in my ear. It was almost like Paul Robeson was right here. You got this. You got this. Go do it. So I went up there with all the confidence in the world. Whether I got it or not, I did my best and I gave it my shot. And next thing I knew, I got the part.
Let your soul take you where you long to be.
Now, to have that honor and distinction of being the first African American to play it on Broadway, that's great. And I appreciate that. But it became bigger than that for me because afterwards I would have people from India, from Brazil, from Japan, from China come up to me and say, now I feel like I can do it. So me having that title is one thing, but me being that door to, for them to see themselves through, I thought that was bigger than that title,
Now you said that was a dream role.
Yeah.
You did it. So what's the dream role now?
It's interesting. I've been lucky enough to play roles that I've dreamt of doing, like Sweeney Todd and Bobby and Company. And, actually, funny enough, I never dreamt of playing Porgy, but it came about. I always thought that I would be seen as Sport and Life because they usually hire musical theater people for that. But when they said Porgy and I would be playing opposite
Audra.
Audra? Anyway, we'll come back to that. I think her name's Audrey, whatever. But I will say this: she owes me half that Tony, because there would not have been a Bess without a Porgy. I'm just saying.
And you were amazing.
What you think I is anyway? To let some dirty hound dog steal my woman. Don't let him have you gonna stay. You gonna hold now, honey, and you got love. So no more crying. Can't you understand? You gonna go about your business singing. Cause you got Porgy. You got your
I loved it so much, Noel.
Thank you. Yeah, that became a dream cast. We all felt. Diane Paulus gave us this theater game that I thought in the beginning was stupid and silly, and I would even say this in front of her. But she made us, and I think she does this with a lot of her cast. She made us tell our story for 5 minutes to the cast and say, "What's your backstory? What is this? How do you relate to somebody on stage?" And blah blah blah. And from that, we found out that, like, I have a cousin on stage, that I have maybe I was an uncle or grand uncle to somebody. So I would relate to them on stage, and people kept saying that we seemed like such a community. And, it felt so good to get that response. Even in our reviews, it's like we were watching a community live.
So when you grew up in Edenville, Florida.
Yeah.
I'm a Florida girl, so we have that in common. And I know Edenville. I know you might tell some people that. They're like, "Okay, where's that?" No. When I was growing up and driving to Orlando, my father would always tell me, there's Edenville. That's the black town. So my dad would tell me all about Zora Neale Hurston and Edenville. And then I met you.
Yeah.
You said, "I'm from Edenville." So you grew up in Edenville, this
Mm-hmm.
guy that had a dream. You moved to New York, and the rest is history. What was that like?
I mean, how much time we got? Because there's layers to it. I grew up playing tennis, and that was my goal. I wanted to be a tennis professional. And I was traveling the United States. I was traveling Florida, and people would ask me where I was from. And this was actually before I really knew what Eatonville was. But instead of saying I was from Eatonville and trying to explain that, I would say I'm from Orlando. Then I found out that what Eatonville was, and I'm from Eatonville, and proudly. And so, it was, if people don't know, we are the oldest Black chartered municipality in the United States. So we were the first to charter the city. There were older Black communities, but we were the first to charter with a government and have an autonomy and everything. So, and Zora Neale Hurston is from there. Also, you old Los Angeles Rams fans would know that Deacon Jones is also from Eatonville as well. But yeah, I grew up it was a Black community. It was one of those things where the community took care of you. In fact, friends and neighbors down the street, if they saw me do something wrong, they could beat my butt. And then they come tell my mama and daddy, and they would beat my butt. So, everybody was looking out for everybody. belonged to the church. I didn't know I could sing. Excuse me. It was just a rite of passage that I joined the choir in church because my dad was the chairman of the deacon board, and we lived in church. So I did what my friends did. I just joined the choir. We didn't have a really good choir, but we made a joyful noise, and I think we were called the Sunbeam Choir. Then then I got into the young adult choir. But again, no one ever said, "Ooh, you can throw down." That's what you had to do. I was one of the tenors. In high school, my best friend told me one time that he said, "Man, I think you got a nice voice." I didn't pay attention to that. In high school, I had to have so many electives to graduate, and they put me in home economics, and I didn't want home economics. So I said, "Let me join the choir because I sing in church. It'll be easy." And that's when I found my love of music, because it was the first time I started singing classical, first started singing Broadway stuff. And I was like, oh, this is the jam. And then my senior year, I auditioned to get into the dance choir. So I did the dance choir stuff, and I got my first solo. And someone said, wow, you can sing. And that was the first time I really got applause and that accolade. And from there, it became a hobby that I enjoyed, but I didn't think professional. And I went to college and I studied business.
Where'd you go to college?
Well, I got a scholarship actually to sing at this junior college in Lake City, Florida. And then after I left there, I went to a small school called Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, which is right next to Eatonville. And I studied economics, but I didn't finish because I got a job working in advertising for a newspaper, and they were going to send me back to school. So like I said, there's so many layers to this. While I was doing that job, I was singing at night in contests, and I was maybe singing in front of a band, maybe for a wedding or something, or just different events. And this one contest that I won, there was a producer that was a judge. He came up to me afterwards and said, I need someone to sing on my cruise ship. Would you be interested? And I had to make a decision. And so I ended up taking that job, and I met people from New York. They encouraged me to move to New York, and here I am 30 years later. So, I mean, there's a lot more to that, but we only have so much time.
Yes. So who were your art heroes? Who were the people that said, yes, go for it, do that, I'm 100% behind you?
Funny enough, there was a guy that was on the cruise that had done Broadway and done a lot of stuff in theater, and I was very intimidated by him. He was a big presence. So I don't know if you've ever been around someone that you need a buffer friend to be there with you so that way you feel comfortable. That's how I felt about this guy. And one of the last nights we were on the ship, I got stuck with him at Midnight Buffet. I'll never forget it. Midnight Buffet, it was just us. And we kind of talked. It was an uncomfortable talking. And he said, what are you going to do after you leave? And I said, well, I've gotten bitten by the bug. Maybe I'll go back to school, learn how to do this stuff, and go to New York, maybe after a couple of years. And he said, I think that's bull. He said, you got the talent, you got the money, you should do it. What better place to learn than in New York City? And I started kind of getting intrigued. And so he talked to me, and he actually gave me really good advice. And I asked him about people who went to the Royal Academy of Fan. And he was like, screw them. He said, they just know more than you do. That's it. They're more book learned and maybe have studied a little bit more, but you have the talent. There's something special. So he said, get to New York. So I got off the ship. 3 weeks later, I moved and started taking his advice. One of the things that he says that I still use to this day was, when you go into an audition, people are behind the desk. The director, the choreographer, the producer, all of them have a problem. What you're doing when you walk into the room and say, hey, I'm your answer. He said, you might not be the answer that day, but then they might remember you, or you just go and solve everybody's problem. Go to every audition. So unless they specifically asked for blonde hair and blue eyes and boobs, I showed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is he saying about where you are today?
Well, God rest his soul. He passed away a few years ago, but we got a chance to work together at a regional theater. We got to do My Fair Lady together. And then he's done some other Broadway stuff. I think one of the last things he did, he was on tour with Wicked. And a couple of years ago, he passed away. But yeah, he and I really, we bonded, and, you know, we didn't stay in communication that often, but when we did, it was great.
Those people.
Those people.
So you were talking about contests in Orlando. What kind of contests?
That was back in the day, because I'm much older than you are.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. We might have been at the same contest.
But back in the day, back in the 80s, Star Search was a big deal. And so they would have these little tiny Star Search kind of type contests at different bars. And this one particular contest, if you won, which is, now that I think about it, stupid, but if you won the contest, you got a chance to audition for Star Search instead of that being the audition. But I won that contest. And I flew up to New York to audition for TV, you know, the TV contest. But yeah, that was the one that actually kind of did it for me. And this guy changed my life. He offered me a gig just out of the blue. And I went back to my supervisor at the newspaper, and I told her about it. And she's like, you know what? You don't want to be 85 years old saying coulda, woulda, shoulda. Go for it. She said, if you don't do it, you'll never know. And if you fail, you can always come back. It's not like you got a win-win situation here. So thank God for those people.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I was at the contest.
Were you?
I used to drive from Jacksonville, Florida to Orlando every week to compete for the Star Search contest in the model category. I'm not lying.
You were at my contest?
I don't know if I was actually at your contest, but I was at the finale. I won in the model category.
Wait a minute. This was at the plantation, blah, 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 in Apopka?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously.
I'm gonna see if I can find some pictures. But is that not funny?
That is...
When you said contest, and I'm thinking Orlando, and I used to drive after work, and I thought, much like you probably, if I can win this thing, then I can get discovered, and I don't have to go through all the steps that everybody else. The same thing people do today with American Idol, I would say.
Right.
I was there.
Oh my God. Oh.
I know. I don't remember like I don't remember, but.
Yeah. Because I mean, we were, for the people in the audience who are listening, we were all focused on our own category. So I was so nervous about, because there was a lot of people there and stuff. Wow.
A lot of people. I know. I mean, and I used to drive nervous. Like, oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, find those pictures, because that would be a trip. All right. Yeah, that would be a trip.
Because one of my good friends actually went to Rollins.
What's her name?
Went to Christina Chauncey.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
Look at the world.
The world.
Yeah, and Christina's like teaching acting now in LA.
In LA, right?
Yeah. So in this amazing career that you've had, and looking on the outside looking in, it really does look like it's been an amazing career. Name one of the highest points of it and one of the lowest points of it.
Wow. Obviously, I think the highest point, maybe that's interesting. That's really interesting, because that's something to really think about, because there've been so many high points. I guess recognition would be one of them, in the sense of Five Bloods and doing something that spectacular. Also, being a part of that legacy of what Scandal has put on ABC. And even though I was not a regular person, I was recurring, people would stop me at the airport saying, Scandal. They wouldn't know my name or anything. Some of them would know Edison Davis, but they're like, Scandal, right? You Scandal, right? So that also being different awards, I would say the Tony nomination really was, I woke up that morning and heard my name, and just like Denzel Washington had that one tear come down this side. But it's being a part of this community that I think is so super high, and how we support each other and do things for each other, like what they used to call Gypsy of the Year. Now I think it's the Red Robe of the Year or something like that. A red bucket of the year. Um, the lows, losing friends, in the sense of death, and or if a show closes, those are some lows. But you know that you can bounce back. At least in my world, I feel like I know that there's going to be something else coming around the corner.
Yeah. And how do you get through those lows? Do you have good friends that you call on? Call on Jesus?
Yeah, that's one friend. Jesus! But yeah, actually being a part of BIV is, as you know, is definitely a source of strength right there, and relying on that family that you get and that you've made there. But yeah, I would just say, just concentrating and focusing and meditating on, and having faith in what's to be is to be. Some things that have happened to me have really actually happened because I know that I've been guided. Someone made a great point by saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So I remember there was an opportunity to go on the road with a very famous show and me starring in it. And all of a sudden some circumstances happened and I turned it down, which was like a leap of faith. And from that, I ended up getting an off-Broadway show and a soap opera that I got to work at the same time. And had I not been in town, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So, I just kind of leave it up to faith.
But you mentioned Andre DeShields.
Yeah.
What has he meant to you?
He was that face that you saw on television, or when you talked about Broadway, the album that he's on for Ain't Misbehavin' and being the Wiz. And I mean, that was my first musical theater album. I played that thing to death. I'll never forget, I was 15, 16 years old. And when people started talking about musical theater, and I never saw the show, but I could imagine what that was. And when I heard his voice, I was like, oh man, that's so cool. It's a different voice too. It's got like this, that's him, that's him, that's Andre. And then to get to meet him and to not be disappointed, because he has a lot of wisdom and he's very nurturing and gives great advice. And we've become friends. So yeah, Andre is just not only very super, super talented, but he's very giving, and was this very powerful Black influence in my life. So I could see myself in him.
There's somebody out there, and I think that we are so inspired by other people's stories. Mm-hmm. So yours has inspired me today. But there's somebody out there that's working at an ad agency that somebody has told them that they have a gift, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do with it. And they've dreamed of a life in the theater as well. What, from your experience, can you tell them?
If it wasn't COVID times, I would have better advice, but I would just say, go and do as much as you can that doesn't affect your current job, but go and sing for a band. Go and record when you can. If there's now ways to record at home and listen to yourself. Take voice lessons, take acting classes, because that will only help your singing. Do things that will help your art grow. Learn how to play an instrument, whether it be guitar or piano. That is vitally important. And just keep creating. That's the main thing. Keep up your art by creating and learning what you can that can help your art grow. And take a chance. Take a chance. If there's an audition, again, as long as it doesn't affect your present job, go to that audition, see what you can do, see if if they like what you do, and yeah, just go for it.
And when is it time to let go of the present job? When do you think a good time is to do that? When your gut says it, or?
when your gut says it, when you know that there is nothing else that you can do. I mean, again, I don't know how much time we have, but I'll just give you a little tiny story. When I first moved to New York, after that talk with that guy on the cruise ship, I was in New York for about 4 weeks. I was there for about a month, and I got 3 jobs, 2 regional theater gigs and 1 non-union commercial. But as soon as I got those gigs, my dad was diagnosed with brain tumor. And so I had to go home, deal with that. And I was with him for 7 months. He passed away. Then I had to help my mother, because he owned his own business. I had to help my mother dissolve his company with all of the paperwork and the legal stuff and blah, blah, blah. After that was all said and done, that was about 1.5 years almost. And I couldn't do anything else. And I said, Mom, I have to go back to New York. I have to go back to New York. And so it was that passion of wanting to do this and try this and explore this world. And, you know, that was 30 years ago.
Was that hard for you to leave and go back to New York? Or
No, not at all. I was like, literally, I felt like there was a pull. I could not. My mom actually was saying stay home because she felt lonely, and because of my dad's death. And I told her, I said, you'll be taken care of. My brother and sister and I will definitely make sure you're okay. And then others, family members as well. But I said, Mom, I have to go back and do this. I have to. So it was hard emotionally, but I had to do it. I had to do it.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, me too.
Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy for me, but it's taught me to love. So it's real to me. And
So with everything, we're in the middle of the pandemic, which we discussed. We have great racial divide, which we discussed, the economics of it all. Looking at the picture of everything, what gives you hope?
I think things like this, you and I communicating this way, what gives me hope is Black Theater United, Black Theater Coalition, Broadway Advocacy Group. People are, and I use those 3 entities to say that people are coming together, no matter what color you are. People are coming together, whether it be by Zoom or ideology or whatever. Everybody's trying to figure things out. And I think that will continue. I see it continuing. The hope is that we are all trying to figure out, we're fighting the same monster out there, no matter if we're coming at it from different ways. Now, within that, we got to get through the muck and the mire of the racial divide and the political divide, but we'll get there. What gives me hope is just, you know, keeping my faith. You know, even in the Bible, which is just a source for me, Job went through so much and he had his faith and then he was rewarded. There's that line that I always go back to when I'm stressed. Be still and know that I am God. That helps me out a lot. It really does. Sometimes I've even heard it audibly. I know people might think that that's strange, but sometimes I've heard it like, just shut up and listen. So.
Norm Lewis, thank you for your artistry throughout the years. Thank you that I knew you at a contest 30 years ago.
We got to talk about that. That's funny.
And thank you for taking the time to come talk to me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I admire you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
It's